Before we get started, Talk Music Talk has a newsletter, a weekly email featuring the current week's guests, plus what past guests are up to. Also, I'll tell you about shows I've attended and new music that I like. To sign up, head on over to talkmusictalk.com, click on the link, subscribe to newsletter, and you are all set. That's talkmusictalk.com. And now for today's episode. Hello there. Welcome to another episode of Talk Music Talk with Boice. I am Boice. This is my podcast. I am your podcasting host. If this is your first time listening to Talk Music Talk, it is a weekly music interview podcast where I have long-form conversations with people who are connected to music from different genres, different backgrounds, established, emerging, points in between. And on this episode, I had the pleasure of speaking to multi-instrumentalist jazz artist Josiah Woodson, based in Paris, originally from Ohio. I had a chance to talk to him when he was doing promotional work for his brand new album in New York. It is called Sweet Elemental. We talk all about the album, the concept, the recording of it. We also talk about pivotal events in his life regarding his musical career. We discuss musical influences, paying dues, how vital music has been in his life. We also talk about the benefits of having a moment-to-moment mindset like he does. And we also talk about a career highlight of his, which was playing on Beyoncé's 4 album and winning a Grammy for his talented efforts. After this conversation, you will hear a song from Sweet Elemental, my favorite track from it, which is called Air. I hope you enjoy this conversation, a wonderful conversation with Josiah Woodson here on Talk Music Talk. So you have the new album coming out, right?
Yes.
Sweet. Well, it's actually out now.
Yes, that's right.
It's officially out. How does that feel?
It feels good. I'm not relaxed, though, because I know I still have a lot of work to do. I have a goal, and I'm really goal-oriented, so for me, like, celebration means like relax. So I'm super happy, but I'm really focused on, okay, what's the next step?
Oh, okay. What is one of the goals, or big goal, one of the goals?
I think I have something to say, and I want to be able to say it to as many people as I can, in the best environments that I can for the music, which includes festivals, more and more of an online presence. I want to make an impact. Okay, that's good. And the concept of the album is? It's interesting. Sweet Elemental. So it's a suite of, it's 6 tracks, but it's a suite of 5 pieces with sort of a fable, sort of a story that goes along with it. And the fable is contained in the liner notes. And so the person can choose to just listen to the album, just consume the sonic landscape, or they can listen along with reading the story, and that's more how the album was intended to be experienced.
Okay. And are they missing a lot if they're not reading?
No, they're not. It's up to the person. I put these pieces of art together for the people. So I want people to be able to experience it how they wish at their comfort level, but I just want to inspire people. That's the goal of the piece. Okay.
So I'm going to say this is probably my first official question.
Okay.
First official question. You often hear people make jazz music instrumental, that there's a story to it. And yours is that you actually have a printed story.
Yes.
But often people don't. How are you want people to conjure up the story in their head, like without words? Like,
okay. Without the words?
Yeah.
Like I said, the whole concept was to inspire and spark imagination. So I didn't have too much of a set goal in terms of what I wanted them to imagine in their head. I just wanted them to start with the element, and sort of put all the emotional and sort of visual things in their head that they already associated with that element, and then kind of experience the music on those terms, on their own terms, really.
Okay. And you're playing primarily trumpet on there, but you're playing other instruments?
No, actually. I'm playing... It worked out for this one that I'm playing primarily guitar. But there's still a lot of trumpet on it.
Okay. Yeah. How did it work out like that?
It was the pieces that we chose. So before I started the process of picking the tunes to record the album, my better half and I, my wife, we were talking about, all right, well, which songs do we want to represent us? And mine was just, well, let me pick my flashiest songs, like all the ones that are attention grabbing.
Yeah.
And she was like, no, I think we would be better if you put the suite together, if you just went with the elements, because it's more of a package deal. It's more of a coherent structure. And once she said that, I started putting it together that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
And did you have like a lot of songs to weed it down to?
I did. There's at least 10 to, there's like 15 songs that I have. Yeah. And so the pieces that are the elemental pieces were mostly guitar. It just kind of, that's how it worked out. Like that's what I was writing on at that point in my career. And that's how it worked.
Okay. Do you have a preference towards one instrument or the other?
It depends on what we're doing. It depends on the style, the context. My preference is to be in an environment that lets me switch back and forth between at least the two of them as I will. That's the best.
How many instruments do you play?
Officially, those two are the main ones. But I also play gigs on piano a bit, flute a bit, and I've played a few bass gigs as well, electric bass.
Okay. And what was the first instrument you played?
Trumpet.
Okay.
Yeah,
and how old were
official.
you? Okay. How old were you when that started?
Between 12 and 14. It was one of those school things, but I didn't start practicing until 14 years old. Yeah.
So what were you doing from 12 to 14?
Just whatever.
Just playing around on it?
My family was moving from Ohio to California.
Okay.
So it was a big resettling period. Through there, so.
And you're originally from Ohio?
Yes. Born in Dayton, near Dayton, Ohio.
Okay. And you picked up the trumpet. Did you have a desire to? Is that a parent thing?
That's an interesting question right there. I don't remember having a choice. I don't remember making the choice. Rather. When it was time to pick instruments in school, it was just trumpet. I didn't even look at another instrument.
Yeah.
I don't remember thinking about it at all. That was the instrument for me. And that's just how it was.
Okay. You had thought about trumpet, or you liked trumpet players?
No, I didn't know any trumpet players. It was one of those things. It was like a prearranged marriage.
Okay, like it chose you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just there. You know.
And did you take to it?
I like to think I did.
Okay.
But the way I describe it, and some people feel the same way about it, but trumpet is, at least for me, kind of like Thor's hammer, where you pick it up and it kind of changes how you are. So when I pick up the trumpet, I have more confidence. I have more sort of bravado. And it was sort of, I've always had that kind of relationship with it. I put my trumpet down and try to speak to somebody. It could be awkward, to incoherent. But I pick up the trumpet and everything kind of aligns. Yeah. And then I can speak through that instrument. So it's always been like that for me, my relationship with the trumpet.
Okay. And you discovered that immediately about yourself?
I discovered that I discovered it immediately later.
Okay. Now, were you into jazz prior to that?
I thought I was. But then I quickly realized I didn't really know what jazz was.
Okay.
And once I learned what jazz really was, then it was over for me. I loved it. I was in love.
Okay. And did that take place at around the same time of training?
Yes, it was at the same time. There were 3 events sort of culminated. Moving to California, going to a jazz camp called Jazz Camp West, which is a famous jazz camp out in the Redwoods in the Bay Area, California, San Francisco Bay Area, just south of San Francisco. The story goes, my father invited. He was like, we're going to jazz camp, and I was like, no, I don't want to go. And he's like, no, you're going to jazz camp. And so I'm like, okay, I'm 14 years old, and I have Thor's hammer. So in my mind, I never said it, but in my mind, I was like, okay, I know this stuff. I'm a good trumpet player. I'm going to go to this camp and teach these cats how to play. That this is how you do it, right? We got to that camp. Camp starts on Sunday. Camp ends on Saturday, the next Saturday. By Wednesday, I'm in full tears, just full, because the realization of how much I didn't know was just, it was daunting. But it wasn't daunting in a discouraging way. I was incredibly encouraged, just kind of heartbroken a bit, but still really, really excited. And by the time Saturday rolled around, when we had the sort of final performance with all the people there, and I took my first solo ever on trumpet, and I got a little bit of an applause from the audience, who knew that, hey, here's a new sort of inductee into the family that is jazz. And they gave me that love and that warmth. After that moment, I can still see that moment. After that moment, I was hooked.
Okay, because that was like a pivotal moment for you.
It was a pivotal moment. And the third part of that pivotal moment was meeting a man named Khalil Shahid, who was a trumpet player in the Bay Area. And our relationship turned into a mentorship, turned into a sort of parent son relationship. Okay. As I say, he's my second father.
Okay. And you met him at the jazz camp?
That's correct.
Okay. And so I guess at the jazz camp, there's people from all over.
That's right.
The best of
That's right.
everywhere.
That's right. People like Mark Levine, John Santos, lots of people come through there. Yeah.
Okay. So you leave jazz camp. What happens next?
Yeah, that's a good question. So my father then was like, he recognized right away the relationship, the sort of, I guess, the potential of the relationship between Khalil and I. And he found out from Khalil that Khalil put on these jazz workshops for kids, almost 1 day a week, sometimes 4, sometimes 3 days a week. At one point, it was 5 days a week. And my dad was like, all right, so do you want to go to this jazz workshop? And once again, I was like, no. But he didn't have to push much, but he made me go. And once again, I was just hooked. Students were supposed to go to one of the workshops a week because they each had different skill levels, and they were in different locations to reach as many people as possible. Yeah. But I was so into it, man. I went to every single one I could. Some days I was going 4 or 5 days a week. Most of the time throughout high school, it was at least 3 days a week going to different jazz workshops. Okay.
And what jazz are you listening to getting into now during this period?
At this period in my life? Standards is what we were playing. I was discovering Clifford Brown, Fats Navarro, and I'm the type of person that I don't expand very quickly. I expand in knowledge and level of comfort with this sort of determination, but a slow determination. So I'll get an album and I'll just kind of, digest that album for a while, and then I'll add another one. So there was only a few songs, at a time that I was listening to over and over in terms of digesting what they were saying.
Okay. And what were you just play along and try to...
Sometimes play along, sometimes listen, because we were learning these tunes at the same time.
Okay.
Tunes like Out of Nowhere / /Nostalgia, the contrafact that was written over that. It's Fats Navarro, Clifford Brown standards, Joyce Ring, Confirmation, Minority, things like this. And I would, we'd be practicing the song for the workshop, and then I'd have the tape at the time to listen to at home, and I just listened to it over and over. Sometimes I'd play along with you.
Okay. Were you thinking of being a musician? Was that your life goal?
I didn't even, I wasn't thinking ahead until I got to December of my senior year in high school. Before that, I just loved music. And that's all. I was just living from moment to moment with the music. I wasn't thinking ahead at all.
What were your other interests in school?
None.
Just the music.
I was kind of a gifted child in that, especially math and language. So, I was taking French at the time. I was going through calculus A and B. And I was good at those things, but I didn't care. That the only thing I really cared about and put my effort into was music and playing trumpet at the time.
Okay. And did you pick up any of the other instruments before you graduated?
No, I didn't.
Just trumpet?
Just trumpet.
Okay. And so now you're going to go to college, right?
That's right.
Okay. And for music?
Yes, that's right.
Where'd you go?
So what happened was in December of my senior year of high school, like I said, I thought that I wanted to be a lawyer at the time, actually. And my stepmother, she had gone to Howard. So I was like, all right, I'll go to Howard, because, like I said, I wasn't really looking forward or planning for the future. I was just kind of living moment to moment, which has its own virtues. And so I put my application into Howard, but then one of my teachers was like, why don't you think about Oberlin? One of the teachers at the workshop. Yeah. And then my band director at school was like, oh, Oberlin doesn't have a jazz department. So then I think I didn't apply because I took his word for it. And then my teachers at the workshop were like, no, we went to Oberlin and the jazz department.
We know.
It's real. So I applied late, and it took some finagling because I was late and I had my audition. But after a little bit of finagling, I got in.
Okay.
To Oberlin.
Okay, that's great. So getting into Oberlin, was this another case of the best from everywhere in the program?
Yes, that's right. That's right. That was one of the first things that I noticed, that when you get there, so, I was one of the 1 or 2 or 3 best in my high school and in my area. We kind of all knew each other. And then once I got there, it was like, oh, wow, everybody was the best in there. Yeah. So it's like, okay, now I'm starting from the bottom again. So it's like, all right, I got to climb this ladder, to the top. Friendly competition, not malicious competition. Okay, very fraternal, friendly competition.
Okay. So are you studying music, or is law even in the picture at all now?
No, just we're in the picture. Matter of fact, Howard didn't even get back to me. So I'm in the conservatory at Oberlin doing full-time music.
Okay, so it's meant to be. Right.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
And how was the whole experience?
At Oberlin?
Yeah.
Transformative, for several different reasons. So at most conservatories that I've heard of, it functions like this. At the end of the first 2 years, you have juries where you have, at Oberlin it worked where you had a list. The first list was like 30 tunes that you had to memorize during your freshman year, and about 60 songs that you have to memorize during your sophomore year, and memorizing not only the melody, all the chords, but then being able to solo over the tune and hit the changes. And freshman year, I whizzed by it, but sophomore year, I didn't quite do enough. So I had to take my sophomore jury again. Okay. And so all that summer I'm practicing, and all that fall semester. Now I'm supposed to have the re-jury sort of in December, and the late great Wendell Logan was the head of the program, and he was an incredibly talented man, sort of like a Quincy Jones type, griot type person, but he was also very, very hard. He didn't take any tea for the fever. And the other department I like that. Teachers were like, oh, yeah. It's an old expression. He didn't take any wooden nickels. But there was also Donald Walden was there. Marcus Belgrave was there. Kenny Davis was there, trumpet player out of Cleveland. And, they were great people. But, none of them were to be played. You know what I mean? Yeah. They were all that sort of old school tradition. So you couldn't get over on them. So I'm working my butt off. And I'm waiting for this email because, I messed up and I didn't pass the sophomore jury. Yeah. So now he has to get the teachers together to listen to me again. So that's a thing that he shouldn't have to do. So I'm practicing, waiting for this email to come, for him telling me when it's going to be. I don't get anything. At Oberlin, we have January term off. To do, projects and stuff for junior and senior year. So my project for January term, my sophomore year, was practice. So I went home and I practiced. I redoubled my efforts. I was in those tunes, man. I was singing them in my sleep. You understand? So I get back to school and some other stuff happened. But I get back to school and Wendell's like, "What are you doing here?" Yeah. They thought I quit. And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And he was like, "Your jury was in December. You didn't show up. Like, you're out of here. Like, what are you doing?" And I'm like, "What?" And I look at my emails, and this was Hotmail back in the day. And this is, 2001. He wasn't very computer savvy. Yeah. His computer, I guess it had tripped over Y2K. So it tagged the email from 1980 or something like that. So on Hotmail, it was like, all right, well, you got this email back in 1980. We're putting it at the bottom of the stack. So like 2,000, 3,000 emails. This one's at the bottom. Oh. So I was looking at the top for new emails. So I was in a bad spot right there, but I was able to convince him to get some of the teachers together and re-jury me. And they were hard already, but you best believe they were looking for it. You know what I'm saying?
Like, you wasted my time
twice? Oh no. But I guess that's a testament to how well I was able to work on the music, because I passed that one with flying colors. And the other thing was Wendell. He never said my name right. He always called me Josiah or something like that. It just wasn't important until after that. Like at the end of that year, at the beginning of my senior year, then he started calling me Josiah. Okay, because I had started to play. I had earned it. Okay, I had earned his notice, so to speak.
And at this point, how do you have your style? You're getting to your style, or you're aware of that? Still
developing. Really, just I firmly believe that mimicry is sort of the foundation of trying to find your style. It's a developmental process, and I was definitely in the developmental process of still mimicking and learning and consuming the language that is jazz and hard bop at the time. At that time, I was really into like the Jazz Messengers with not only Album of the Year with Wynton and them back in the early 80s, but earlier than that, Freddie and Curtis and Wayne, the Messengers. I was so digging that, like the core and that. Okay. Yeah.
And at this point, are you now thinking to be a full-time musician?
I'm starting to. One of my best friends at the time, his name Andre Murchison, who's a great trombone player, and he probably doesn't even know he did this. But I was like, we're looking at the end of school, and I'm like, so what are you gonna do? And he's like, I think I'm gonna get my master's. And that's the first time I thought, oh, okay, yeah, maybe I'll apply for a master's program. So that's what I ended up doing.
Okay, he just sparked that.
That's right, because I'm still in the moment at this time in my life. I'm not really looking too much farther than one or 2 years in advance at this point. Which, like I said, it has its own virtues, right? And so I knew I wanted to be in New York, because New York, that's where this is. That's where the fire is. I want to be close to the fire. So I wanted to apply to Manhattan School of Music. And as sort of, I don't want to say safety option, because it's still a really, really good school. I applied to, New England Conservatory as well. I think those are the only two I applied to. And I did both of those auditions, and I got into both schools. But New England had a little bit more money to offer. And, coming out of student loans from Oberlin, I was like, look, I'm trying to get whatever I can get, So I was like, all right, I'll take 2 years in Boston. So I went to New England Conservatory.
Okay, and how was that experience?
It was much different than Oberlin. I love both of my experiences, and they're both very influential. Oberlin was for tradition and grounding and foundation, and that was awesome for that. New England, I don't want to say they're more on the front edge, but they definitely have a different sort of perspective on the music. That's where the Monk Institute started, but also the sort of dynamic there. It's next to Berkeley, and which are both in the middle of sort of an academic hotbed. Okay. So New England was more intellectually focused on the music rather than spiritually, foundationally, and traditionally focused. Okay. So there was more avant-garde stuff. There was, George Garzone and Jerry Bergonzi were there. But at the same time, there was Cecil McBee, Marcus Belgrave, who taught me at Oberlin. Billy Hart, who was also at Oberlin, was at NEC as well, and I was able to hang around him a bit as well. So NEC sort of, I don't know, it's like they provided the icing on top of the cake of the pre-professional career Josiah. Okay, and how does that shape you, your sound, and all that, your style? I think it gives me a little bit more breadth. That's BREADTH. And it helped me be a little bit more comfortable in what do I want to say? More, I don't want to say artistically dynamic, but less set, more sort of free environments. Because that's why I started learning that. I studied with Danilo Perez, and he introduced me really to odd meters and different claves and Latin jazz. And so it just kind of expanded my sort of musical worldview.
Okay. And are you gigging at this time while you're in school too?
Yes. Not as much as I would like to have. I was spending most of my time doing school stuff because they pack your schedule. So 1 or 2 big bands in there, 1 or 2 combos, and then all the stuff you're doing for classes. I didn't have too much time for gigs during that period, but I still did gig in bands outside of school.
Okay. And once you graduate from there, where do you go to? Did you get to New York then?
I went straight to the New York area. Okay. I moved to Jersey City because the rent was a little bit better there.
It's close.
Yeah, it's right there. Look, I took the PATH train right over there to Manhattan and started paying dues.
And how'd you like doing this? You're doing all the gigging and stuff too? And...
No, at that point, man, look, I was slugging. Because, New York... there aren't any wooden nickels in New York, you know what I'm saying? So like everybody, like now this is the best of the best of the best coming to New York, whether they went to school or not. These cats are out for blood. Okay. And I was too, you know? And so for my first 3 years in New York, man, I was just hitting jam sessions, We do, when Sweet Basils was still there, Sweet Rhythms was there, we'd do that jam session until we went over to Fat Cat at like 1 or 2 a.m. And then stay there until 4 a.m., something like that. And I'd come home and maybe do it the next day or go up to Boston because I still had contacts up there. But I was slugging it out for 3 years. It was like month to month, man, week to week, busking in the subway just to get some change just to go home, to get a bagel or something. Okay. You get the bagels right when they're about to close, you can get a whole bunch in the bag. I was, that kind of stuff, paying dues. That's what life was at that point for me. It wasn't until after 3 years of doing that I started getting more students, started getting remembered by people and called for different gigs and stuff. And then it started moving forward. And by the time I left, after I think 5 or 6 years living in the New York area, like I was solid. I was working,
What kept you going emotionally, to keep plugging through?
Same thing as always. That sort of moment to moment love of the music during that sort of 3-year period where it was really, really tough. And I actually did start applying to jobs that, had nothing to do with music. And I didn't get those either. But I realized somewhere deep down inside that, if I only had music, then I'd only have music, and I'd be okay with it. Okay. And that sort of rock bottom foundation helped to propel me forward, helped me to take those risks and keep taking the risks. Okay. And being like, look, all right, I might only have a bagel today, but I have a bagel in my trumpet. I'm gonna put one foot in front of the other and keep going. Okay.
And what would you say is the big foot in the door for you?
One of the big feet in the door, I should say. Foots. Was one of my friends, a trombone player named Alex Asher, called me. Actually, he sent me this email one day, and he was like, "Yo, Beyoncé needs a horn section. Be at such and such a place tomorrow, 2:30." No joke. Like at the bottom of the email, he said, "No joke," because that's like, come on, get out of here.
And wait 1 day's notice too.
Right, exactly. No, but check this out. So I received the email in the morning, like 10 in the morning. And the email said tomorrow at 2:30. Okay. And it had been sent that day. When I looked at the date, these emails keep coming back.
Are you still using Hotmail?
No, it wasn't Hotmail at this time. No, it might have been. But he had sent the email after midnight. Okay. So it had said that day. Yeah. And so I was thinking the next day. And I was sick. So I was like, all right, cool. I'm going to sleep and get better. And the next day I'm going to go. Yeah. And I had, subbed out my students for the next day and everything. I get a call at 2. I think I was supposed to be there at 2. And he was like, where are you? And I was like, oh, you meant today. You sent it today. It said tomorrow, but you meant today because you were still living in today yesterday. So I was like, oh. So I take some flu meds and grab my trumpet and go down to Times Square, and we get in that studio. The 3 or 4 of us. It was me, a trumpet player named Cole Kamen Green, Alex Asher. I think there was one more person that we did a whole bunch of sessions. But basically, that first session, there were some percussionists and other people, and it was just a jam session with Beyoncé. They were trying out stuff.
Okay.
They were trying out Afrobeat stuff. And she was so impressed by us. And we were all NEC cats. And I've known Alex not only through NEC, but through Oberlin, too. Yeah. So we go way back. But she was so impressed with us that she was like, all right, all the rest of y'all, thank you. We're going to keep these cats and record. So we started recording right then. Came in the next day too and started laying down tracks. And over the course of the next, 6 to 8 months, she would call us in, drop of a hat, when she was back in town, and we would, sub our gigs out, sub our students out, drop that hat and get in there. Sometimes for, 10, 12 hours at a time, working late into the morning with her, putting down these tracks. And we put down about 15 tracks in total. And we were writing some of the horn lines. We were arranging some of the horn lines. Sometimes somebody had an idea, or she had an idea. It would be sung to us, or the producer, or the engineer had an idea, and we were just working, organically like that. And we ended up recording. They ended up choosing about 7 of the tracks that we recorded for her album, her 4th album called 4. And we ended up actually winning a Grammy. Being nominated for a Grammy twice, one for Party and one for Love on Top, and then winning for Love on Top. So that was like a big, resume boosting event that just happened to occur.
Okay, that's cool. So you're hearing just the pieces of the songs, you're not hearing the full...
No, we're hearing pretty much the full song. Okay. Yeah, we're laying on top of things that are, 85% complete here.
Okay. And so what was it like? When did you first hear the whole album? When did you...
4?
Yeah.
I don't remember exactly when I heard it because it was just such a huge event.
Yeah.
But we were so excited. I remember walking out of the studio sometimes with Nick and Alex in Times Square, 3 a.m., quiet, time. One time Times Square is quiet. And we would just be walking down the street we just stepped out of the studio with one of the biggest international artists alive today, So surreal. Yeah. So that entire sort of area, time in my life was really surreal.
Mm-hmm. Could you feel in that moment as you're recording the album that was like a new chapter for her?
No. No. I think I retreated back to that, for better or for worse, that, moment to moment living where I was really focused on what we were doing. And I didn't take my mind out of the situation to see that perspective of what are we doing? That's why it was such a big, shift when we walked out of the studio and my mind could retreat and gain that perspective. Okay. But in the studio, we were working. Like I said, we were working for, hours and hours at a time.
Yeah. And how does this change your life, having this on your resume?
I'm not really sure. I'm not really sure. I think it might help. It might have helped some people to remember my name. That guy did that. All right, I'll give him a call for a gig or something. Stuff like that. I can't think of anything super, super tangible. Where somebody was like, you recorded with Beyonce, now you're recording with me. Nobody really said that.
But it's the thing that keeps you going.
It's one of the things. Yes, it's definitely one of the highlight moments.
And at what point do you start planning to have your debut album? When does that come into the picture?
So my better half, my wife, Tarani, is a gigantic inspiration for me. So I met her during those years, right at the end of that 3-year period where I was struggling. And I say the trumpet's Thor's hammer, and it is sort of when I have it. But outside of that sort of career stuff, artists can be really self-conscious, and I'm one of those artists. So I never really give myself too much credit at one time. We ride the roller coaster of thinking, where I can play a little bit now.
Yeah.
And oh man, I got to go back to the shed. I'm
5
terrible.
minutes later.
Yeah, we ride that roller coaster, and that's not easy. And so it was very good for me to have somebody who was more stable and had that perspective to be like, no, you're good. You're really good at all these instruments that you play. You should put yourself out there.
Yeah.
And it was her that was like, you have these tunes, because I was writing songs and I didn't have a band. She was like, you should get a band.
Yeah.
So I was like, I should get a band. So I put a band together with some of my friends from NEC and from the area. And she was like, you should do a few gigs. So I started doing a few gigs under my own name.
Yeah.
And then she got a job offer in France. And she was like, hey, do you want to move to France? And I'm like, no.
Yeah.
But I was like, we're young. We had just gotten married.
Okay.
And I was like, why don't you apply for the job and we'll see what happens after that. She applied for the job and she got it. And we were like, you know what? It is sort of like a start over for me because, I have to make new contacts, learn a new language.
Okay,
It was, but I wasn't starting from scratch. And so I chose not to look at the fear, but look at the opportunity. And so we moved out there to France, and she was still encouraging. She was like, you should record an album. You have stuff to say.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, I should record an album. And it took me a while to sort of get my band together in France, because I had to pick new people and meet new people and try different formations, get gigs, and work the music to the point where we were able to record. And, I'm not making a ton of money, and albums can cost, 20, 30,000, easy. So I'm putting together the people, the music. I'm still writing more music. And when I finally was in the right place to start recording, it took from that moment a year and a half to get the entire thing recorded, mixed and mastered.
Okay.
So it was a long process.
Yeah.
And I guess with my personality, I'm the type of person that, I want to think things all the way through as much as I can. But for this one, I had to think as much as I could, but then be like, you know what, I'm going to start, even though I don't know how to end this. So that's where I am right now. Okay. I got my foot out there.
Yeah.
And I don't know where ground is, but I'm going to put my foot out there, and I'm going to put the next foot out there.
Yeah.
And
what they say is the net will appear.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But you got to put your feet out there first.
You have to take that leap of faith. And so that's been this process.
And how's where are you? You still in France?
I'm living in Paris.
Okay.
Based in Paris. Been there for 5 years now.
Okay. You enjoying it?
I am enjoying Paris. I miss New York.
Yeah.
But I am enjoying Paris.
And how's it feel? Like, you got the album coming out. Like, so what's up for you for the...
Like I said at the beginning, it feels good.
Yeah.
It feels good. But just like, I feel similarly to when we were in the studio with Beyoncé. This is a great event, but I'm not letting myself sort of pull back and get the perspective yet, because I'm focused on what the next steps are.
Yeah.
Getting my name out there more, booking more gigs for the band so people can learn about the project. More people can pick up the album, so my name kind of buzzes more, getting more sort of online reach. So when clubs, promoters, and bookers and festival curators look at me, if the light comes over to me, they say, okay, this guy has a little bit of a following and he has something to say. Maybe we'll give him this stage, stepping stones.
Okay.
That's what I'm looking at.
Okay. Well, it's a beautiful album.
Oh, thank you very much.
Yes, I really enjoyed it.
Thank you.
And what's the best place for people to keep up to date online with you?
Yeah,
and all that? Get the album.
I think I'm the only Josiah Woodson on Facebook. Facebook is a good resource for me, as well as my site, which is www.josiahwoodson.com. And there's also my YouTube site, which is also Josiah Woodson. So basically, you put Josiah Woodson in Google, you're going to come across all of my outlets.
The Josiah Woodson will come up.
That's right, yeah. Yes.
Well, thank you for doing this. This was wonderful.
Oh, thank you for having me. This was a pleasure.
Sure. And that was Sweet Elemental's lead track, Air, an amazing album, and I absolutely love that song from Josiah Woodson. Get the album and follow him on social media at josiahwoodson.com. Josiah is spelled Josiah. I have several places online, talkmusictalk.com for podcast information. I also have a personal website, which is thisisboice.com. You can read excerpts from the novels that I have written and also check out the music that I make. And if you are on Instagram or Twitter, follow me there at thisisboice. I have a call to action for you. There is a TMT app free for iPhone and Android. You get every single episode of the podcast, and you can get the app wherever you like to get your apps, or you can subscribe to the podcast on iTunes or Google Play and pretty much everywhere else. If you're listening on iTunes, it is especially helpful to leave a rating and or review to help increase the exposure of Talk Music Talk. And you can also find the podcast on SoundCloud at soundcloud.com/thisisboice, starting with episode 100. And also at that link, you can find my music. Again, that's soundcloud.com/thisisboice. And once you download or subscribe to the podcast, I have a back catalog suggestion for you. Episode number 67 with Vijay Iyer, jazz pianist, also does hip hop and classical, MacArthur Fellow Genius Grant Award winner. And it is probably the only conversation you will hear from Vijay Iyer where he's talking about breakdancing as a kid. That's right. Only on Talk Music Talk. And you also hear music from his album Break Stuff on it. That's episode number 67 with Vijay Iyer. Link will be in the show notes. Thank you so much for listening to this episode with Josiah Woodson. I hope you enjoyed it. Till next time, and there will be a next time. This one's for you, Liz.